Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender at Blender HD. If you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Friday, September 23rd, and there's no MMA tomorrow, so we'll be talking about NFL. The Sunday slate, 13-game slate coming up. A lot of high totals, right? In comparison to what we've seen the first 2 weeks on the slate, going over some of the tools that you could find here at RotoGrinders, as well as at the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. The original Fundamentals Masterclass is a 15-hour audio DFS course. If you haven't taken it, you should take it right now. Go to theoryofdfs.com. And then 3 weeks ago, we released the Advanced Players course. It's a 10-chapter audio course with more advanced concepts, applications of those concepts, as well as Excel tools exclusively and provided by my co-author James McCool. And it's tools that the past 3 weeks I've been using to build my lineups. NFL Showdown wasn't bad yesterday until the last play of the game. Would have been better with a Kareem Hunt touchdown instead of a Chubb touchdown, but whatever. But wasn't that bad. Building my baseball lineups with these tools alongside Lineup HQ, and we'll show off some of that stuff today. Good morning in the chat. Give me those thummy thumbs. You know how much I love those. Click that thumbs up button. Like, subscribe. We got tons of content on the channel today, from free stuff to paid stuff. I'm going to be on the Premium Game Theory show. That's only for RotoGrinders subscribers later today. That'll be posted probably later, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, to go over some correlation leverage, all kind of the advanced topics that you should be worried about for your GPP lineups this coming Sunday. So sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Click on the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. You also get access to our RotoGrinders Premium Discord. I have a channel there, Blender's Game Theory, and you can talk to me pretty much anytime. And I also run 2 or 3 Zoom coaching sessions, private coaching, every month. And you get access to Lineup HQ and all the premium content and the ownership and the projections and everything you possibly would want. Good morning, Wata, Suki Singh, the early birds, as usual. Good morning, Bart, Jupocalypse, Matt Mears, Red Sykes Sports. Let's see. Using the trimmer, Matt Mears says, using the trimmer, I was surprised at how different the results were when I smart trimmed using ownership product versus ownership sum. Are there any scenarios where we would tend to use one versus the other? Well, they're both blunt methodologies, right? Ownership product versus ownership sum. The problem you get into with ownership sum is that you may have a high owned lineup, but because like on Showdown, it may be like a $46,000 lineup. And it may have a high ownership sum, but actually the combination of the players isn't as owned as you think it is. And the ownership product, on the other hand, you may think you have a much lower owned lineup than you do. Same for ownership, both of them the same way. You have like some 2% owned player, but it's like a 49-7 lineup. And a lot of out of that 2% of people that have that one player, a lot of people actually have that lineup. So you may think that it's duped like 4 times when it's actually duped 14 times. So there's downsides to both of them. I think ownership products is a little bit more precise than ownership sum, but they're both useful. I think ownership product maybe a little bit more useful for NBA when you're not going to really worry about salary much, right? Because you're probably going to be using most of your salary regardless. The difference is for both methods, the product more so than the sum. The sum, if you're off by a little bit, especially on the low-owned players, it's not going to affect you as much. Like, let's say you have someone that's 1% owned that really is 5% owned. Now, if you're using ownership sum, that's only a difference of 4, like in the sum. So a lineup that's like 150 versus a lineup that's 156 isn't that great. But if you're using ownership product, like multiplying by 4 versus multiplying by 1 could be dramatically different. So ownership, but be aware that when you're using ownership product, especially for the lower owned players, single digit owned players, you have to be a little bit more accurate on your ownership. If you're much more off on those single digit owned players, you may get some wildly different results. So that there are positives and negatives to both of them. Ownership sum is technically easier, and also you could probably see that in most optimizers like Lineup HQ. But we have the NFL slate coming up on Sunday. As I talk about on the show a lot about like sites like Prize Picks and Underdog, it it's gonna sound counterintuitive. Uh, if you haven't already gotten your picks, your props in by now, I mean I wouldn't even say by now, but Tuesday or Wednesday, most likely you're not getting good value. Okay, the only places where you get good value is in uncertain situations. Okay. So if you're gonna play on Prize Picks, Underdog, those types of site, Monkey Nice Fight, I guess, use the promo code Grinders, get $100 deposit match bonus if you go over there. Uh, like people ask me on like Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning, even like, what do you got? What do I got? It's like this. I don't got anything that you could get, right? Because everything has moved. I've made on Prize Picks. I mean, I have my sheet right here. On Prize Picks, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Don't count yesterday because I had Harris yesterday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I have 18 props on Prize Picks currently. Okay, 18 of them. Obviously, all in pairs. Like I don't do 5 flexes. I just do pairs. Two pick powers, and I literally round robin the whole thing. Right. So I've one, and then I round robin that one with the other 17, then the 2 with the other 16, and the 3 with the other 15. So I have like, I don't know, 100, 200, 300 cards. And a lot of times they're just like anywhere between like 10 and 25 bucks, right? Depending on how off the line is, right? And I do that for baseball, right? Baseball, you wait for the board to come up at like 1 in the morning. You hammer, you use the bat projections, you just hammer the ones that are the most off, and then typically by the morning they've moved in your direction and the value's gone, right? You got it at the best number, you got it at value, but you have to get to that minus 137 line on Prize Picks. So just because it's off by 2 yards doesn't do you any good. You have to get to that 58th, 59th percentile. So like for instance, like Mac Jones, like I got Mac Jones, 240 and a half passing yards is currently what's on the board. I have his over at 215 and a half, a 25-yard difference. Like it's no good now. Like Mac Jones over 240 and a half is not a minus 137, not even close. Okay. At 215 and a half, he's fine. Right. But you can't get that now. You had to gotten that. I think that moved on maybe Wednesday afternoon or something like that. You gotta get them early. Right. It's not, there's no use to it now. Like for instance, let's see, another one, David Montgomery. Montgomery just moved. Right. David Montgomery's up to 66 and a half. I have it at 63 and a half. You could have gotten that yesterday if you wanted, right? We have Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, I took his under. Okay, Aaron Jones, 50 and a half is on Prize Picks now. I have his under 59 and a half. I have 9-yard difference. His under at 50 and a half ain't value anymore. Right? I'm not doing this to like brag or anything. This is what you should be doing. I'm not doing anything special. All I'm doing is looking at the early blitz projections that Derek Carty comes out with, and then comparing that to the numbers that are on the screen. That's it. There's no highfalutin anything that I'm doing. You just have to do it early. You have to do it before it moves, before the value is gone. So like we have also like Javonte Williams. I have the under on Javonte Williams. He's right now. He's at 49 and a half now. I have his under 60 and a half. Okay, 11-yard difference. That matters. 49 and a half, that's like even money right now. Right? Under 60 and a half, that's more than minus 137. So, like, if you're going to be doing Prize Picks and Underdog, there is value there. You just have to get it early. So, like, before, like, there's, to me, truthfully, unless there's some uncertain situation. So, like, for instance, like Pittman. Pittman's at 61 and a half. I have his over at 61 and a half. I believe he's going to play. And he's not going to be limited. Right? So the blitz projects him, if he's not limited or anything, to 86 yards. That's plenty more than 61.5. And I could see Pittman's number moving depending on that. Now, if it turns out, oh, he's going to be limited and not going to play that many snaps, well, then I get screwed, right? Probably 61.5 is way too high, right? But that's the type of thing that you have to do. But a lot of times these numbers come out and they're off way enough that you could get a minus 137 on them. So like that when people ask me, how do you do the DFS sites like Draftkings and FanDuel and also do Prize Picks and Underdog? It's like, well, there are two different times, right? I'm doing this early. I'm doing Prize Picks and Underdog early. I don't have to. I don't have to look at the numbers Sunday morning on Prize Picks and Underdog. I'm going to assume the value is gone unless there's some uncertain situation. What am I looking for? What number is going to be that far off to give me a minus 137, a 58.5 win probability? That would be by close, 5 hours before game time. Probably nothing. Probably nothing. And if I see value there from a projection system, it's more likely that the projections may be slightly off, right? That no one else has hit that number enough that the number moved up or down, right? So, like, if you're going to be on these sites for NFL, especially, like, you got to hit these on Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest. Maybe Thursday you could find something, right? But probably there's not as much value on Thursday, and maybe it'll move a little. But you got to get on these early. I'm going to stress that more often than not. There's so many people that, I'll talk to on Friday or Saturday. It's like, I know you do some props on Prize Picks and Underdog. What do you like? Like, I like nothing. There's nothing to like. It's like, so you don't got anything? No, I got plenty. I just got it all on Tuesday or Wednesday. So just want to stress that. So if you're going to do this, do it early. And then DFS, then you just worry about that later. Then Saturday night, Sunday morning, I don't have to worry about any of this. I already got all my action down, right? I have like on NFL, I have like $5,000 between both sites, 5 or 6 grand between all these props. And if I go, 55, 60%, depending on the dollar amounts for each, I make some money, right? So I don't have to hit 4 pick powers and 5 flexes and all that type of crap. So just pair them all together and let's go. Let's go to the promised land. Joseph Ryerson says 1 a.m. Eastern. Yes, 1 a.m. Eastern time. Typically the Prize Picks board comes out around, so maybe it's sometimes a little bit earlier. Depends on for baseball, I'm assuming. I don't necessarily know when football goes up for the net. They'll put some up. Like they'll put more like baseball early 1 a.m. They'll put up the strikeouts and the fantasy points. Like they won't put out the pitcher outs or some of the other stuff, but the Ks and the fantasy points, which is FanDuel scoring for Prize Picks, for baseball, for the pitchers at least. They'll put up at like 1 a.m. So like that's what I do before I go to sleep, right? Compare that to the bat. Maybe I could find like I found a couple of them. I found maybe 5 last night. 2 of them are still there for baseball. So do that. And then when NFL, like typically Monday, Tuesday, they start coming out for football, and then you see where you could find and hammer them as much as possible. But for this slate coming up for DFS purposes on DraftKings, what I've done for this show, I've pre-done it to save time, is I've run lineups. And I've run lineups with an aggregate. So I've gone around the industry grabbing projections, grabbing ownership projections, grabbing median fantasy point projections around the industry, and aggregated them with the RotoGrinders projections and the bat that we have here at RG. So I could build lineups based on, in general, kind of like what the industry, I'm trying to figure out what other people are going to be doing. If they take these projections, you could do it by projection source. Obviously, if some source is a little bit higher on this and a little bit lower on that, they'll get more of this and less of that, right? But as an aggregate, just for the sake of this show, I could do 300 sets like there's no tomorrow. For me personally, I may build 30 of these, right? With different stack combinations, different types of configurations for each projection source, and then run them through the theory of DFS tools. But for the sake of the show, I'm just trying to build like 300 just at one shot, which may not be the most accurate, but it's somewhat accurate, right? So running these projections using just like a 2+1 stack, right? Your quarterback with a wide receiver or tight end with a run back of a wide receiver or tight end. It's just like got a little game stack. Just to see who comes up the most and what players are attached to other players the most, right? In lineups in general, in my opponent's lineups. So I'm getting a lot of Leonard Fournette, a lot of David Montgomery, a lot of Stephon Diggs. You'll see, like, obviously, the guys that are showing up the most are the highest fantasy point per dollar type plays and most likely going to be in like a cash lineup, right? I could hit that optimize button right here on Lineup HQ for this aggregate set and get the top median lineup, 141.77, 50K lineup. And it's Hurts, Jacobs, Montgomery, Samuel, Myers, Diggs, Hawkinson, Fournette, and the Panthers defense. Like, this looks like a cash lineup. Maybe it's the cash lineup that I actually play, right, on DraftKings. So this is a cash lineup. You're avoiding this in GPP, right? You don't want to eat all of this chalk all at once, right? This is good for double ups. This is good for triple ups even, like this type of stuff. But I want to build with some amount of correlation, right? Like a quarterback, a run back, like that type of thing, and see what players stick to each other. Now, obviously, Fournette and Montgomery are going to stick a lot to each other. So it's very easy to see on this level 1 analysis. What are my opponents going to, if people didn't care about what other people were doing, what type of lineups are they building? You're going to see Fournette, Montgomery, Diggs, Irv Smith, Jacoby Myers, Panthers defense, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Jacobs, Curtis Samuel. And then I capped everything at 20% for a quarterback just because no quarterback's going to be 80% owned or anything like that. I just want to see what the skill position players or the defenses come in. Okay. And it's easy on level 1 because you could just like, okay, these are the highest, right down to Curtis Samuel. Those are like that. That's like, those are the combinations that you're going to see a lot. You're going to see Montgomery with Irv Smith. You're going to see Fournette with Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're going to see a lot of these guys together, but it could also be represented by a correlation matrix. And I'm going to share my other screen, right? And you can see here, this is the portfolio correlation matrix tool that's part of theoryofdfs.com, which you could pick up the course. So you put in, I already put in, you just have to cut in the lineups, right? It's very easy. This isn't complicated. If you know how to cut and paste and press a button, you could work these things. It's Excel, right? So I just exported from Lineup HQ and I just cut and paste the lineups in here. Click the button to load in. It takes a minute or two, depending on how big the portfolio is. Then it comes out with what the R values of all the players to each other. Okay, and instead of going through this entire matrix, it'll show you a list of the most, out of these 300 lineups, what combinations of players show up the most together as a 2-player combination. The number 1 is Fournette and Diggs. Number 2 is Montgomery and Fournette. Number 3 is Montgomery and Diggs. And then we have Fournette and Irv Smith, Diggs and Irv Smith, Montgomery and Irv Smith, Fournette and Jacoby Myers. Then it starts kind of dipping down. So you can even look here in the middle section of like the max lineup percentage and the variance factor. So the top numbers over here are the ones that appear in the most lineups together. Fournette, Diggs, Montgomery, and then a little bit of a gap to Irv Smith, then a little bit more of a gap to Jacoby Myers and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then a bit of a gap if we pass by the quarterbacks, Panthers, Samuel, Jacobs. And then we get down to Russell Gage, Waddle, and then we got guys that aren't as correlated to these other guys up here. So the top 4, if you want to classify it, are Fournette, Diggs, Montgomery, and Irv Smith, which makes sense. I'm naming the cash lineup. I'm naming a cash lineup, essentially. Okay? Mike B asks, when running the aggregate, are you weighting each projection set evenly? For this one that I'm showing you right now, yes. But the way that I do it, I would weight them separately, depending on which level you're doing. Okay, so if you're trying to do and trying to simulate to some extent lineups that other people are using, you should be weighting the projections based on what you think their usage in your contest. So if you're playing a large field contest, maybe the usage on some certain projection sets are going to be lower. If you're playing smaller field contests, maybe certain projection sets are going to be weighted much higher. Okay, so if you think that this other site a lot more people use than RotoGrinders. I don't know why. They should be using RotoGrinders or the blitz projections. For this type of analysis on what you think the field is going to do, it should represent that. It shouldn't be that you think the project. You can think the projections are horrible. You could say, well, I think half the people are going to be using bad projections. Well, for this purpose of seeing what lineups are going to be more correlated to each other, you should be putting that in at 50% then. Now, when you build your lineups, you're going to be putting that in at 10% or not even using it in your aggregate, right? So the weight should be in some relation to either whatever you believe is the most accurate projections, you should be building your lineups from. But the ones to analyze everyone else, you should just weigh it at whatever you think that your contest is going to be. I mean, you're never going to get a 37.2. I'm not doing that. I'm ballparking it. But for this purpose on today's show, I just did it evenly. I just did it even Steven, right? Like I said, I would do this for 300 sets for multiple different combinations and all types of things. I may, in this portfolio correlation matrix, I may run this with 3,000 lineups rather than 300, right? Now, in the level 1 analysis, it's not going to change much. The chalk is the chalk, right? It's when you get to level 2 and level 3, that's when you may see some discrepancies. So in level 1, we see Fournette, Diggs, Montgomery, Smith. I mean, these are the types of players that will be higher owned together in combination. So it's ones that if I'm playing GPP, I would look to avoid in combination or have less of in combination, which means if you're playing a lineup that has Fournette, Diggs, Montgomery, and Smith in it, it's going to be much harder to get different. You have to get more different in the rest of your lineups than if you just played 2 of them or just played 1 of them. So it doesn't mean it's like, oh, I'm going to fade Fournette. I'm going to fade Diggs. I'm going to fade Montgomery. I'm going to fade Irv Smith Jr. No, you can play plenty of each as long as maybe you don't play them as much together, right? So it's not about necessarily playing or fading. It's what types of lineups. Lineups, not players. We talk about this all the time. I talk about this all the time in theory of DFS. So looking at this chart, maybe we could see what we do if we could group out on this top end. Maybe we'll make a group with the top 4, and then we'll make a group with the top 4 with the next couple down to maybe Josh Jacobs, not including the quarterbacks, and then set a max of each to see what lineups come out that don't use as many of those combinations. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to Lineup HQ and do just that. So I'm going to go to player groups, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to put in Fournette, Diggs, Montgomery, and Irv Smith. Now you could, if you're playing like single entry or stuff like that, maybe you set a max of 3. You go, as long as I don't play 3 out of the 4, right? If you're playing like maybe mid-size contests, maybe 2 out of the 4. You take a look at more of those types of lineups. And if you're playing large field contests, maybe you do a max of 1, right? You don't do a max of 0. That means you never have any of these players, but they're the highest projected players. If you want to make very contrarian lineups that don't play any of these players, sure, put the max at 0. But let's put the max at 2 right now. Okay? So we can see what lineups come out that have no more than 2. I don't mind having any of these players, just not all 4 of them together. And then in the next one, I'm going to put those players in also. Fournette, Irv Smith, David Montgomery. Because what we're trying to do is now go to a level 2 analysis. And we got Smith. And then we have the next player. So the first group we had max of 2. Maybe the next group we have a max of 4, right? To be broad. Or it could be 3 even. You could do 1 and 2. Just make it whatever scalable, right? 2. If you only have max of 1 here, maybe you'd only have a max of 3 in the next group. So we're going to add the other players. Jacoby Myers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Amon-Ra. We got the Panthers defense, Curtis Samuel, and Josh Jacobs. So maybe we have a max of 4 on this. Now, obviously, that means no more than 2 of the first group and no more of 2 and 4 of the, the remaining group. You don't mind 4. Like, you would not mind, since, like, someone like Jacobs isn't in this group. Like, you wouldn't mind having a lineup that's Amon-Ra St. Brown, Curtis Samuel, Josh Jacobs, and Jacoby Myers. Because if you had that, that means you didn't have any of the players from the first one, which makes you pretty contrarian by not having the 4 highest owned players. Right? So I don't mind having 4 of these, but most likely it's going to be 2 of these guys and then 2 more of the other guys. Now we could run this. So I'm going to run it the same way that I did before, using these 2 groups to see what then comes up. This would be level 2 analysis. So I'm going to run that right now. I'm going to let that run. It's going to run 300 because I have some amount of, because once you start adding groups and everything, the speed, you get a little speed decrease. This may take maybe 3 or 4 minutes to do. I'll answer any questions you want in the YouTube chat. Thumbs up. Give me a thumb. Say hi in the YouTube chat. I will answer any questions that you do want. What am I going to do now? I'm going to go over to the other side. Okay. With this level 1 analysis, I'm going to go back to my Excel screen, and I'm going to import these lineups. You see these lineups? I'm just going to cut and paste, take them all, copy, and I'm going to put them in the portfolio trimmer, which is another tool that you see here. Right? I already put the projections in. You cut and paste your projections in here. I already did that. I pre-did that. And this is the new version. There'll be a little cleanup, so the formatting will be a little bit better. Right? So I'm going to cut and paste the lineups in. The new version that I tested yesterday, James fixed. Right? You don't get the new version yet. That'll probably come out on Monday. The normal version works. It doesn't have the exposures and the key player threshold. What I'm showing you right now, you could still do on the portfolio trimmer at theoryofdfs.com. Okay? So I've loaded all of these in with these aggregate projections into the portfolio trimmer. Now I'm going to load it into the portfolio manager. You can see it right here. As you see here, you could see my exposures right down, like how much of each player do I have out of these lineups. Right? Go like that. Okay. So we get all these lineups, and it'll sort it right by project. I mean, you can sort by any column, but it automatically sorts by projection, by median projection for all of these lineups. Shows you the price, the floor, the ceiling, total ownership. Shows you all of this. You could trim by a salary threshold. I don't want to play any lineups that are lower than this or higher than that, or projection lower than this or higher than that. Right? So if I want to, if I built 300 lineups and I'm only wanting to play 20 of them, maybe it's like, maybe I cut off, the lineups that are under 140 projection or something, or whatever you want. You could do that easier here than you can in Lineup HQ. But it also has a smart trim function. Now, the smart trim function, as I've shown multiple times on this show before, is that if you go down here on projection, I know it's small on the screen. Like, we see this lineup here that's at 124 ownership sum, but projects at 140. But there are lineups that are lower owned and higher projected. And that's kind of like, from a blunt heuristic, your goal in DFS and GPP is to build the highest projected lineups for the lowest ownership. So being that you're not going to play all 300 lineups, that you wouldn't play all 300 lineups, you'd probably play more of the lineups that are higher projected, that are lower owned. You'd cut out the ones like we see here, and it's marked in red, right? One's a 123 ownership sum, but only at 138 projection. There's a lot of lineups that project better that have lower ownership. There's no easy way to get rid of them. If I did that in Lineup HQ, you'd have to do that manually. I've just scrolled through, get rid of this one, get rid of that one, get rid of this one. They can be very time consuming, right? So in the portfolio trimmer, we've added that smart trim functionality that you could do it just in one click. Okay. In the new version, you can do that by a player. Okay. So if I did it right now with no player keyed in, it would just take all the lineups. It would just, I could trim all of them down. But let's say you see here with the exposures, right? We showed the exposures of your portfolio. which this is in the new version. So you could keep track. You could be like, do I really want all of this? Do I really want Josh Jacobs? And if I wanted to trim just the Josh Jacobs lineups, I could just go right here and go down to Josh Jacobs, where I could find him somewhere. It's sorted by number. He's there somewhere. Let's see. I go to Josh Jacobs and just trim those. Right? It won't touch any of the other lineups. So let's say I trimmed all of the lineups right now. Right? I could also change the ownership type to sum or product. So let's say I trimmed all of them, all 300. And remember, these are like kind of chalky lineups, right? Like we're not going to play a lot of them, especially the ones that come out on the top in a GPP. Definitely not in a large field GPP. But let's smart trim. And why are we going to smart trim? Even though we're not using these lineups, I want to see what players out of these kind of maybe little chalkier combinations come up more, contribute more for their ownership, for their lower ownership. And this is obviously using an aggregate, right? I didn't manually adjust any of this ownership. It's just whatever the aggregate is. So if I smart trim, right, may take a couple of seconds. There's 300 lineups it has to go through. And whichever ones come up more than the others, whatever players show up more in lineups are more likely to be the ones that are under-owned, and the ones that are over-owned, you're not going to show as much of, right? Okay. Well, you have to do a little work on these calculations because it's obviously not 142%. I can't have that much, right? But you get a lot of Montgomery and Fournette and Diggs. Yeah, pretty much the best plays, right? Is there anything that comes up like really weirdly up? The Falcons defense? Maybe the Falcons. I mean, we got it really down. We got it down to 10 lineups. T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Zay Jones, Russell Gage, Shi Smith, Marvin Jones Jr. shows up, Dallas Goedert. I'm going to assume in a lot of my lineups that when I do level 2 analysis that some of these are the guys that are going to come up. But there's another methodology of just using the portfolio trimmer to like see. It's like, oh, I'll put a bunch of lineups in, and when I smart trim it down, which players show up more that contribute more to lower owned lineups than to higher owned lineups. So I just wanted to show you that. So we go back to the portfolio correlation matrix. Right? This is the level 1 analysis. So now if I'm going to go back to lineup HQ, where's lineup HQ? Let's see. There it is. Okay. So we ran this again using that group. So we're still getting a lot of Montgomery and Fournette because you still have to play 2 running backs, right? What are we not getting as much of anymore at all? We're still getting Jacoby Myers, Brandon Cooks, Panthers defense, Hawkinson. Now we're getting Hawkinson, Gage, Zay Jones. Still getting some Curtis Samuel, more Higbee, right? And then we get down there. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to throw this level 2 types of lineups, which still use some. I mean, we take a look at this first lineup up here. Cousins, Jefferson, Montgomery, Fournette, Myers, Cooks, Hawkinson, Zay Jones, Panthers defense. Still plenty owned players in here, right? 107 total ownership. It's not a contrarian lineup, but it's also not really a chalky lineup, right? We're not playing that many combinations. Yeah, we are playing the Montgomery Fournette combination, and the Panthers defense is kind of in there, but we're building around some of it. Zay Jones. Justin Jefferson's not going to be as owned as you think he's going to be at his price, right? Go down to the next one. I mean, you see Damian Pierce is in here instead. So now I'm going to take this level 2. I'm going to export it, and I'm going to put that into the portfolio correlation matrix. And I'll go over to my other screen, right? So I'm going to go to the insert lineup section. These lineups that are in the first one, I'm going to clear, right? We have a button for you. Just clear it. Then you don't have to scroll. You don't have to cut. You don't have to do anything. And then I'm going to go grab the lineup that came out for the lineup HQ. You can see it right here. It's just on my other screen. All you have to do is cut and paste, right? All I'm doing is just A to I. There, done. Copy, right? Bring it back over here. Paste it right there. Done. Okay, I'm going to hit load lineups into portfolio assessment. This may take 3 or 4 minutes because it's 300 lineups and there's enough diversification in there that it's going to start comparing. That's all Excel is going to do. So I'm going to press that button and it's going to go. While we're waiting for that, I'll take some questions from the YouTube chat, as always. Chris Todd says, how the hell does Blender only have 13 likes? Hit that button, y'all. Blender's awesome. Yeah, hit the thummy thumbs. You know how much I love the thummy thumbs. DF Cashline 21 just joining in to use randomness during this process. No, I'm trying to figure out what the field is going to look like. These aren't lineups that I'm building for myself. This is purely a research and reconnaissance mission of if people are using these median projections, what are their lineups more likely to look like than not? Right? I don't care about diversification. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I don't care about randomness. I don't care about any of that. I want to see what the most, if someone just went to an optimizer with projections and said, give me 150 lineups, what would they look like? What would players would stick together? More than not. And I don't want to play those combinations as much. That's all I'm doing here. So the randomness would defeat the purpose of that. You're not going to get definitive answers there. Things will be much more smoothed out. That's something you do in your own process when you build your lineups. So you don't have players that just stick together too often to each other and you want to be more diverse. But for this, no, the whole point is to exploit median projections. That's the whole purpose of this. Mike B says, when the trimmer comes out, when the new trimmer comes out, will the key players have a difference from captain and flex for showdown lineups? Yes. I did that yesterday, right? James gave me a new version to test yesterday afternoon, and I did use the new portfolio trimmer for last night's showdown contest. And yes, I was able to trim. I could select Amari Cooper as a captain. I could select Amari Cooper as a flex differently, and then trim just by those. Everything worked. I used it yesterday. I made I think 1,100 lineups or something like that, and I played 50 of them, and I got them all down in the portfolio trimmer itself. So with the exposures column and everything, I didn't have to bring it back and go, how much David Bell do I really want? I was able to trim just those lineups, right? How many Chubb captains do I really want to be contrarian? So I may trim some of those lineups down. So yeah, it worked very well. For showdown, the captain and the flex will be keyed differently in that lineup. Joseph Ryerson, how do the new tool help to leverage the over-owned players by getting to their teammates or whatever? Well, that you have to figure out yourself. I mean, that you could just think of common sense-wise, right? You would put in that you want more of someone regardless of the fact that they're lower projected. So, for instance, if David Montgomery is going to be highly owned, maybe you're playing more Darnell Mooney, right? But he's low-owned as it is. So, like, ownership should take care of that as well. That strategically you have to do for yourself. This is not going to determine who's the most leverage off of other people. This is just how to build lineups that are lower owned and higher projected. The tools don't know what the players are, right? They don't know any of that. You have to decide on that. If you think Leonard Fournette, leverage on Leonard Fournette is playing Russell Gage, then just make more Russell Gage lineups that don't have Leonard Fournette in it, right? That's what you'd be. DJ Shark. You want to build a Goff Shark lineup with Terry McLaurin instead of the Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Curtis Samuel lineup? But like the players that you're playing instead as leverage are going to be lower projected. But you're basing that off of leverage. There's nothing that measures leverage in this, right? The projection is the projection. So that's something you have to do strategically yourself. Oh, I'm just going to build more. I'm going to build more DJ Shark lineups. Let's see what they look like. Grant Brand asks, how did you do in Showdown? Winning lineup had projected 26 dupes. I lost, but I was not unhappy with my lineups. I didn't have enough Amari Cooper, right? But I had I had a ton of both quarterbacks. Both quarterbacks were under owned yesterday. There's no reason in any Showdown slate that quarterbacks should be under 50% owned when they're not 10K. Right? So I played more for a passing type of game. I mean, I played for more of a passing type of game. I would have made some money. I would have actually profitable money if the Browns didn't get a touchdown at the end on the kickoff last play. I didn't even see it. All I know is like, oh my God, blah blah blah, and then I look and like half my money's gone. What happened there? Thanks a lot. Chalk Brown's defense gets there. Okay, so now I'm looking at these level 2 lineups. Okay, what players come together more often? Now we don't get Diggs as high up there. If you're just maxing the 2, you're still getting a ton of Montgomery and Fournette. Montgomery, Fournette, Myers. Then we get to the level 2 players like Hawkinson, Cooks, Samuel, which we have already in there, Gage, Jefferson starts coming up more, Zay Jones, Josh Jacobs is still in there, Diggs is still in there, Goddard a little bit more probably because of Hurts. We still get plenty of the Panthers, and then we kind of like drop off from there. Still got, Hill and Waddle are coming up. They're coming up. I'm on Rob Brown. St. Brown goes down significantly. Right? So this would be like the level 2 analysis. What do these lineups look like that don't have like all of those players in, but still project for pretty well? So now maybe I take these, right? And I make a third group, right? So I did 2, 4. Maybe, in fact, Diggs and Montgomery come up way so much. They're attached so much that maybe I make a group that's just that. Like this third level analysis showed that even in second level, Montgomery and Fournette are coming up a lot. So maybe I'm going to try to group them out individually. Even though you can make lineups that have both of them in them, the fact that the top 2 in the level 2 analysis means they're both together, maybe I just want to set a max 1 of both. Now, if I set a max 1 on Fournette and Montgomery, that means I should see Diggs and Irv Smith come up more. Okay? I still have this group of 4, max of 4 here. Right? Maybe I set this group, this group the max of 2, so I could get Fournette plus Diggs. I could get Fournette plus Smith. I get Montgomery plus Diggs and Montgomery plus Smith. Okay, so I still can get that. And then in the level 3 analysis, I'm going to create another group. Right? I'm going to put all the people from the first group in, which I could just duplicate it. So this is easier. Right? I take this group, duplicate it. Right? And now add, we got Myers, add Hawkinson. And we got Samuel in there. Let's put Cooks in there as well. Let's put Gage in there as well. Justin Jefferson. Right? These are the ones that Zay Jones. Zay Jones. Right? I'll let me bring it over to lineup HQ. Right? So I'm going in. I'm creating another group. Okay, forget about the quarterbacks. Goddard, let's put Goddard in there as well. Because obviously Hurts and Allen, they're going to be popular, right? Cousins. So you put this group in. And you go, I don't want any more 4 of those, like as a total. Right? So these are level 2 players. Now let's create lineups. Now that I'm trying to basically group out and find lineups that project well, or maybe still own decently, but just like the player combinations are not like the same. So now let's do some level 3 analysis. I'm going to build 300 lineups the same way I did before. Like I said earlier, you could do this for like each set. Oh, I'm going to do this for 3+1 lineups. I'm going to do this for 3+0 lineups. I'm going to do this from 1+1 lineups. I'm going to do you could do this for everything, for each projection set, for each whatever. You can take this to forever reasons. And the groups that you set up are all in relation to what you judge, right? Some people may go, well, maybe Irv Smith Jr. isn't as chalky enough for me to be in this level 1 group. That's up to you, right? Some people will be like, well, I'm just going to jam in Fournette and Montgomery no matter what. And okay, then don't group them out, right? This is all the groups that you make here are just a judgment call. It doesn't mean you can't make a group with all 4 of these players in it. It doesn't mean that you can't make a lineup with all four that is good. Just understand that in combination, it's going to be the highest combination of players, which means you're going to have to get a little bit more off the board in these types of lineups. And you could run those types of lineups. You could run 300 of those types of lineups, right? You could run 300 sets in lineup HQ for God knows how many lineups. And let's say you're only playing 20 and you go, okay, maybe I do want to play one or two that have all four of these together. That's perfectly fine. As a heuristic, right? Use that the word of the week. I'm building these. I'm making these groups just so it makes it easier. I'm just not considering those other lineups because I could still make plus EV lineups without them. And what I throw in groups is going to be all dependent on what I judge the field is going to do and what the players that come up more so together than others. On some slates, maybe Fournette and Montgomery aren't even level 2 or a little bit more smoothed out. And I'm like, okay, maybe I don't make a max one of this. Right? You remember, you could still make lineups with both of them in it. You don't have to do this. Right? This is a way to eliminate lineups, not build lineups that are lineups that have these two are bad. No, there are tons of lineups on Sunday. Fournette plus Montgomery, if you play them both together, you could build, let's say, 65,000 lineups that are good, that I would say are great with both of them together. But you could also build 185,000 lineups that only have one of them. Okay? You could build 35,000 lineups that have neither of them that are great. Okay? Once you add up how many great lineups you could play, you're in the millions. Okay? Understand the scope of this. So this does not mean you cannot play these two players together. But as a heuristic, right? Players, if you play both of them together, you're sharing a lot of more points with more of the field. So you know what would be easier for you to win? By not sharing as many points with the rest of the field. That would be easier. Doesn't mean it's better, just it's easier. Two things are different. It's going to be much harder to build a lineup that's a Josh Allen dig stack, Fournette and Montgomery, Irv Smith as a punt tight end in the Panthers defense. It's going to be much harder. You're going to have to find some 1% owned guy in the wide receiver slot that puts up 35 points. And two of them, right? It's going to be harder to build those lineups. It's more likely you end up with too chalky of a lineup and it's not good enough. It's a negative EV lineup because it's too chalky. By doing this, I'm eliminating a lot of those types of mistakes where I don't have to find 1% owned players that go off for 1 million points. Because it rarely happens anyway. So people look at this and go, oh, these are the exact groups to do. No, there's no correct answers. How do I do this process for myself? Well, you could weigh anything you want. You could aggregate 8 different projection sources. You could weigh them differently. You could change the ownership. You could change the projections. You could change the numbers. You could change the groups. You could change. The process of doing this, I think, is useful. But the exact things that you put in could be whatever. I mean, look at my build rules. I put 50% running backs, 50% wide receiver in the flex. Does it mean you have to do that? No, I just did it bluntly. Maybe you think more people are playing running back in the flex and you put that at 75. You put wide receiver at 25. Maybe you think the opposite. Maybe you think some lineups are going to, maybe 10% of lineups actually have 2 tight ends. I'm just not even considering those lineups. But maybe you want to. Maybe you want to consider 10%. I think that's perfectly fine. Maybe you want to set the quarterback max exposure to 30% and not 20, maybe 15. Right? Maybe you want to set the salary cap at 49.8. The 49 min, 49.8 is a min, or maybe you don't mind 48.5. I mean, there's no right answer to those questions. There's no correct. It's just okay. All I'm doing is I just want to see the main thing. I don't need to know Nico Collins. What is his correlation to other players? I don't give a crap. Right? He's not going to be owned, so I don't care about his R value to Stephon Diggs. Most likely, if you're playing Nico Collins, your lineup is pretty contrarian. Right, I just care about the top ones. So whether or not this is 75, 25, yeah, obviously if I put running back flex 75, I'm just going to get a lot more Montgomery and Fournette in those lineups. Is it going to make that much of a difference? Probably not. So now I'm running these lineups under what we would call level 3. We separated out some players. These would be more the type of lineups that you would build. Right? But what do these lineups look like? So we're getting a lot of Diggs. Still getting Montgomery. We're still getting Montgomery and Fournette. They're just not together. Look, they're in like 100% of the lineups. Or almost 100. 298 out of 300. But obviously, Josh Jacobs is going to come up some more. Jacoby Myers, Damian Pierce, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill starts coming up more, right? So now I'm going to take this level 3, and I'm going to export this. Right, you can see here, just export. Like, just hit the button. That's it. Hit the button. It saves to you, whatever. It saves to your browser. You open that up. I'm going to go over to my portfolio correlation matrix. Open the file. Cut and paste all the lineups. Paste it right there, right? There you go. You see it right there. This isn't complicated, right? And press the button. Load lineups into portfolio assessment. And of course, this will take a couple of minutes. So I'll answer questions in the meantime. These tools, these Excel tools, are part of the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports for advanced players. And if you listen to the 10-part audio, right, 6 hours long, because it's also an audio course, you'll understand why these tools are useful. The concepts behind using a portfolio correlation matrix, using a portfolio trimmer, using a lineup simulator. That's part of the course. By using a duplication predictor or checker. You'll understand why they're useful. But these are still blunt tools. These are blunt methodologies. They're not precise methodologies. It's not running it's not running. These are the best lineups. It's not doing that. It's only as good as what you put into it. Garbage in, garbage out. So it's a way for you to build a lot of lineups and go, how do I choose between a lot of these lineups? That may all be pretty good. But which ones do I want to play more of than others? Right? And how do I keep track of that? If I have 2 lineups to choose from, what's a good way? Which one has a higher ceiling? Which one wins more often than not? And it may be by this much. And you'd be like, okay, that's enough to give me, I'll play that one over that one. That's all this is doing. Right? What players are going to be played together more? Because a lot of people will go through and go, oh, this guy is high owned, that guy is like Amon-Ra St. Brown. A lot of people may put in that first group and go, oh, Amon-Ra St. Brown, chalk receiver. Right? They'll put in Montgomery, then put in Fournette, they'll put in Irv Smith Jr., they'll put in Stephon Diggs, and then they'll also put in Amon-Ra St. Brown again. But based on the portfolio correlation matrix, based on his salary, it's hard to play Diggs and Amon-Ra St. Brown in a Fournette plus Montgomery lineup, even with Irv Smith as a tight end. Just you run out of salary, or you're playing a low price quarterback. Right? It's just a little tougher. So Diggs and Amon-Ra St. Brown aren't as correlated together in lineups as you think they are. Now, they're going to be in plenty of lineups together. I'm not saying that they're not going to be in plenty of lineups, but not as many as Montgomery and Fournette with those guys, because it's a running back position that you have to play 2 of. And Montgomery's 4,900 and Fournette's 6,500, which is still cheaper than Amon-Ra St. Brown. So going through that, you go, oh, okay. Amon-Ra St. Brown is up there, but he's not nearly anywhere close to as up there as the other 4 guys. So it's like, okay, so he's not as chalky. He's still chalk, but not as chalky as those guys, right? And then you may look and you may go Justin Jefferson and go, well, I can't play Cousins, Jefferson, Thielen. Cousins, Jefferson, Smith, Amon-Ra St. Brown, because that's too popular. It's like, well, if you don't have Fournette or Montgomery in the lineup, like you're perfectly fine, right? Fournette and Montgomery correlate to those players much more highly than Curtis Samuel, right? You could still play other semi-chalky players, not on the top level of chalkiness, but in the middle level. So we look here at the 3rd level analysis, and obviously we'll see Jacobs come up more. Right, we see a little bit more Montgomery because he's cheaper than Fournette. So you're still getting a bunch of these guys like Diggs. You're getting more Higbee. So to me, this tells me that like Higbee seems like better salary leverage at tight end than like Hockenson or Goddard, and that makes sense. You know why? Think conceptually. Why would Higbee be worth more in the tight end spot than Hawkinson? Obviously, Irv Smith, because Irv Smith is chalky. Okay, so like we know that for sure. But better than Goddard or Hawkinson. All you have to do is think about it. Think about how leverage works. Think about how ownership on combinations of players work. Hawkinson is going to be higher owned because the Minnesota game, Detroit game is going to be higher owned. So a lot of Irv Smith, a lot of Jefferson lineups, a lot of Cousins lineups, and hell, Irv Smith plus Hawkinson, right? A lot of those lineups are going to be, they'll be correlated with one another, right? So if you're playing Hawkinson lineups are more likely to have Fournette and Montgomery and Amon-Ra, that type of line, right? Because you're going to stack Goff plus Amon-Ra plus Hawkinson. And then you run it back with one of the Vikings, Jefferson, Irv Smith, something like that. Then you also have Goddard. Well, Hurts is going to be one of the most owned quarterbacks, right? Hurts, Goddard, A.J. Brown. Hurts, Goddard, Devonta Smith, right? Who are the Eagles playing? Playing Washington? Is that right? Just want to make sure. Yeah, they're playing Washington. So Curtis Samuel will be in those lineups also, probably. So what is the tight end that has nothing to do with any of that? This Rams Cardinals game isn't going to be as owned. So playing Higbee for leverage in the tight end spot, he's the probably the best projected in that range. And we also see throughout all of this, where the hell is Travis Kelce? Travis Kelce will not be high owned. And it's going to be tough to use him because there's not many very well projected cheaper players. So we can see here that, like, just running all of this, where am I getting? I mean, if we take a look at just about salary, I mean, we're not getting much of like Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook. Like a lot of these guys are, I mean, they have ceilings, and we can see on the ownership that they're not going to be, they're going to be maybe the high single digit owned, but they definitely have 40 plus point ceilings. But our opponents aren't going to be playing many of those. Even if you group out stuff, it's still going to be a lot of digs, right? A lot of digs. Jacobs may get a little bit higher ownership for people that are like, well, I'm not going to play Montgomery and Fournette together, and then they end up playing Jacobs in one of the spots. Amon-Ra is still going to be more popular. Jacoby Myers is going to be way more popular than you think. It's hard to get. I mean, there's not much value. A 5K wide receiver with like a 50, 6 for 50, 11 points, 12 points ain't bad. Obviously, Waddle and Hill, especially because of recency bias, will be a little bit more owned. But Dameon Pierce, if you want to get off of some of the running back chalk, I think Dameon Pierce looks pretty good. He'll be under-owned. He'll be owned, but under-owned in combination with a lot of these players. Then we start looking down the list. Cooper Kupp, 8%. Okay, he has a ceiling. Marvin Jones Jr., Shi Smith. It seems like what? Carolina, Jacksonville, Rashad Perryman, Russell Gage. I'm not sure about playing Brady, but I could see playing Perryman or Gage as a one-off. Still, you get Zay Jones. Then Michael Carter starts showing up. I think Michael Carter as a cheap running back is pretty good. So you can start getting a sense of like, well, what guys are not going to be nearly as owned as they should be. Even when you start like grouping out some of these guys, it's like you're not like I think Hurts, AJ Brown, Hurts, Devonta Smith is not going to be as owned as you think it's going to be. I think Goddard is more tied to Hurts than either of the wide receivers. Only because a lot of people are going to want to play Diggs. And I think it matters. I think it really depends on if Gabe Davis is out or not. But you can see here, like we get some of the Bengals. Look at this. Like, why not a Bengals? Burrow plus Higgins plus Michael Carter. That seems projected well enough. And you're not as correlated with some of the other higher chalky players. And that means you can play a lineup that is Burrow, Higgins, Carter, and then still play Fournette or Montgomery in that lineup. You could still play Stephon Diggs in that lineup. You could still play Amon-Ra in that lineup. You could still do that because these numbers show that they're really, those players aren't that correlated with the other players, right? You could probably still play Montgomery and Fournette in that lineup, truthfully. But maybe if you want to get extra leverage, you don't even do that. So it's like you can still play high-owned players. Just don't play them in combinations that are similar to your opponents, as similar to your opponents. You could be over the field on someone. I could have 50% Diggs. And as long as I'm not playing a lot of him with, the Montgomery and Fournette and Irv Smith and everything together, it's like, sure, feel free. Go nuts. Right? Play a Falcon stack and play Stephon Diggs as a one-off in that. That's perfectly fine. Stephon Diggs isn't really correlated in many of these lineups with anyone else in a Falcons game. So it's like, okay, that makes Diggs, put him in. No problem. But this is how you use the tools. I mean, to me, I'm not, there's no football analysis here. I don't use football analysis to play DFS. Just use the numbers. That's it. Can I organize the numbers better than other people can organize the numbers? There you go. Welcome to DFS. Right? Using lineup HQ, using Excel tools. Just organize the numbers better. That's it. That's it. It's not complicated. It's really not. And you can get all of that. Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 10-chapter audio course. Having a solid understanding of game theory concepts in daily fantasy sports can separate you from the recreational players. But how do you develop a systematic, repeatable, time-efficient process to analyze slates and consistently build lineups that show a long-term profit? In this 10-chapter audio course, you will learn these expert-level methodologies and simply leveraging publicly available information and tools, like the ones that you could get at RotoGrinders, all without requiring any formal expertise in mathematics or any experience in computer programming whatsoever. Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, how to apply profitable DFS strategies for advanced players, including the custom Excel tools such as the single lineup optimizer, lineup simulator, portfolio trimmer, portfolio correlation matrix, the duplication checker and predictor, contest reviewer, the contest history analyzer. You can get it all. It all works for Microsoft Excel 2021 plus and on. And it's a 10-chapter audio course, 6 hours of audio. And you can even download it to your device and you can listen to it in a podcast player or whatever. Go to theoryofdfs.com and you could pick that up today. Pick that up now. Use the tools that I use. I mean, like I'm showing you. I'm not making this stuff up, right? I literally showed you. This is what I would do, right? Of course, these are the projections of Friday morning, and maybe they change. Pittman's out. Okay, well, then now you got to run it all over again, right? Maybe you weigh things differently. Maybe you judge things. Maybe you don't mind playing some lineups that are like this. Maybe I don't mind playing lineups that are. I'm playing different contests that you also. You're playing 500-man contests. You're probably okay. I don't think I have to play a Mac Hollins on this slate. Like I don't think there's a need in those types of contests, right? Or are you playing the large field contest and it's like, yeah, the 4 chalkiest players, I'm just going to X out. Like, you could build lineups with those 4 chalky players, but if you're playing the Millie Maker, I could understand if you just, okay, as a heuristic, just X them all out and just build whatever lineups are left. Okay, sure. Hopefully all of them fail. If one of them does well, you're probably screwed. But yeah, I can see you doing that, right? So there's not a correct. You don't. I'm going to go through everything that Jordan did and plug it in, and those are the right answers. No. The right answers do not exist in DFS. They don't. The only right answer is to give me a thumb on your way out the door. That's the only right answer in DFS. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. We got content out the ass the remainder of the day. NFL content, live locks on the Scores and Odds channel. NFL, the single entry show, the tournament take show. My Game Theory show, which is just for RotoGrinders premium members. We got Grinders Live later today, right? There's still baseball going on. Grinders Live, Crunch Time. We got tons of stuff. The Ownership Report videos. The Blitz show comes out tomorrow. We got 3 shows early in the morning, 10:30 up to lock in the morning Eastern on Sunday. Me and Dean do a Twitter space to sweat the last part of the games at like 6:15 Eastern at night on Twitter. And then we got the showdown show. Right, we got the showdown shows on Sunday, Monday, Thursday. We got tons of stuff. So go to RotoGrinders. Go to RotoGrinders Premium. Click on that link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. And I'll be back. I'll be back on Monday. I'm here like every day. Okay. If you got any questions? I got answers. There's no right answers, but I got answers. And we'll be going over this the Sunday slate on Monday show with James, and then on to week 4, and then maybe soon basketball. Right, we got a couple of weeks till basketball's back. Oh my God, so much stuff going on at the same time. I will see you later, Monday through Friday, as you'll always see me most days. Right, Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.